Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Emily Rutherford-Liska, Executive Director of the Jacksonville Historical Society. And on our show, we're going to talk about a historic site marker project that can teach you more about the city you call Jacksonville, Florida, and some very special communities within our city. We'll also be talking about treasures in the archives of the Jacksonville Historical Society and give you a sneak peek at some of those treasures. But first, we'll start with our historic site marker project. And we have with us people from diverse communities in Jacksonville, Florida. Two of my favorite friends representing Old Arlington, Inc., Cleve Powell.
Yes,
Hello, Cleve.
Good
and
morning.
Ann
Good
Burt.
afternoon.
Hello, Ann.
Hi, Emily.
And also my longtime dear friend, Dr. Carolyn Williams, University of North Florida, and a prime mover and shaker of the Durkeeville community here in Jacksonville. So we're going to be talking about this unique project where, as it turned out, Durkeeville and Old Arlington, Inc., and some other communities too, which will be named, came together and with the assistance of actually Comcast, and they don't know we're here doing this until right now, talk about this wonderful project to place historic site markers through points in our city. And start just a little bit, Carolyn, with you, how the project came about briefly.
Very briefly, well, this was two grant proposals to Comcast to place historic markers in different communities, Arlington and the Durkeeville community. And the grants were sponsored by Alpha Kappa Alpha, which sponsored the markers or project for Old Arlington.
That's a women's black sorority,
it's an
correct? Yes.
very historic African-American sorority. And the other was Northwest Jacksonville Community Development Corporation, sponsored the grant for markers in the Durkeeville community. And once they received the applications, thankfully they were approved. And the projects got linked. We did get our separate funding that we requested for both applications, but we have been partners in, I won't say crime, but partners.
In a very exciting way
yes.
to really tell people and to capture for people the unique history of some Jacksonville communities that a lot of people don't realize just how deep the history is in those areas.
And I think one of the interesting things about this is because it really does highlight, as you said, the diversity, because within both communities we are focusing on different African American as well as mainstream Jacksonville community. And so we really have a really nice, I think, overview of Jacksonville itself in terms of the history and the kinds of people that have created these communities.
In fact, let's start with Old Arlington, Inc. And gosh, that's an area that has real depth of history, first appearing on the scene about what year with some homes and plantations. Give me some years, Cleve.
Okay, well, starting out with in the English period, there was three major plantations: Newcastle, the William Reddy, and Samuel Potts. And those three started on the North Shore and went all the way around the point. What's called Reddy's Point is Chaseville Point. And Newcastle was a 700-acre plantation. Reddy was 800. And then Samuel Potts went all the way down to Clifton. That was some 7,000 acres.
And this is long before there was a Jacksonville, Florida. This is this is in the 1760s, 1770s, and 80s.
Yeah,
so this is
through
very
84.
early.
And then after the English left, then the Spanish took back over, and they very actively asked people to have plantations. So Newcastle, that was an English plantation, Facio that owned it swore allegiance to Spain and remained there. Reddy disappeared, and then a man named Francis Richard came in. He was from Italy, and around 1805 he got almost all the waterfront coming down Arlington's east shore.
And we still have his very house in Jacksonville as the oldest structure save the Kingsley Plantation, which is a very big deal, the Francis Richard House.
Yeah.
But what I want to do now, I want to get an example of one of your historic site markers that you're actually going to be installing to talk about some of the brilliant history of Old Arlington. And it may not be some of everything we're talking about here. But let's get the first one up, one of these wonderful site markers. This is actually what we've got in set, but we're showing it close up. And this is near and dear to your heart, Cleve, is it not?
Yes, it is. This is F.W. Bruce, or Bruce Park, and this is this
In Arlington. People can find this park in Arlington
yeah,
now.
it's on Arlington Road. 6630, I think, is the address across the street. I don't know what it is. But it gives a history of how Arlington actually formed the community itself. Because in 1912, F.W. Bruce, who was a retired Corps of Engineers employee, and a man named Sprinkle, and a Spalding, and Mr. John Alderman, they all got together and formed a realty company. And they bought 1,100 acres of the former Richard Grant, which had been sold to John Sammis, and they bought that and they subdivided it, and that became Arlington Heights and Arlington Heights Addition, which ran from the St. Johns River all the way up Arlington Road to Rohara.
And this man, F.W. Bruce, was just not another man. He was,
Well,
he filled people in.
yeah, he was the first fort keeper at St. Augustine in 1885.
And somebody else. He was your great-grandfather.
He was my great-grandfather.
Oh, that's
yeah.
nice. And so he had tremendous history here, and he was a great saver and keeper of history, too, and much of that got passed on to you, and you now share these wonderful photos and documents with residents here in Jacksonville so we can know our history, and it's appreciated.
One photo in particular, when he was stationed at the fort, Geronimo's tribe was in prison there. And I've got pictures of Geronimo's tribe that he had that I took to the St. Augustine Historical Society, and as a result, one of Geronimo's tribe's descendants came to St. Augustine and found those pictures, and
Oh gosh.
he called me
amazing.
and said, "Can I use these in the book I'm writing?" I said, "Well, sure, you know." So
How thrilling that
What a
must have been
story.
for him and for you. And really, it speaks so much to what's important about saving history. People have to get these wonderful pieces to the right places, and you got it to the St. Augustine Historical Society. And I know we're always so lucky at the Jacksonville Historical Society that you share your Jacksonville history with us in the same way so researchers can find it. Now, Ann, I want to get to you. You've been active in Old Arlington, Inc. for a number of years. Tell us the overview of this project. How many of these site markers, like the F.W. Bruce marker, will you have up, and what are some of the subjects and events and places covered?
We're going to have 23 markers, and yes, we had a long time. The longer we got, excuse me, the more time we spent researching our history with Cleve's wonderful help and Dr. Schaefer's books. We realized we had so much really wonderful history, and it was fading away. I mean, we still had people who remembered the small communities of Arlington, but a lot of it was slipping away, and so we had really for a long time wanted to put up markers such as these, and we're just so thankful that to have this Comcast grant to be able to do it. Some of the markers, we're marking the Sammis plantation, strawberry plantation, and we're marking the mill. We have 2 markers going on Jacksonville University, where Anna Kingsley, Anna had her plantation home there, and then also about Arlington, a very unique community in those days, a very unique mixed race community. We have each of the small communities marked.
And while you're talking about some of these places, I'm going to ask for the map of the site. Very good, thank you. These are where all the markers can be found shown here on the map. So there are a lot of them. I'm sorry.
All of them except the Cosmo community actually fall in the defined boundaries of Old Arlington. The Cosmo is a little bit outside of it, but we definitely wanted to mark that also. We have a marker regarding the JM&P Railroad that served the communities of Arlington and
That was one of the
Beaches.
first railroads that went from downtown to the city to the beach, and the JM&P. Go ahead and tell people what they used to call the nickname.
Jumpmen and push.
Jump in and push because the thing would break down.
Yes, it had a little trouble getting up grade, and when they couldn't get up the grade, they just had them jump off and push it until.
I hope you say that on the marker to make that mark. I believe history needs to be as much fun as it is. So, well, that's so you have 23 of these, and I had talked with both of you before the show started, and to Carolyn, Dr. Williams too. You know, how can people get a map in their hands so they can go see these markers once they're all in? And you're promising me that we can get
will
them
have that
yes.
on our website. We're in the process of developing our map, and we will also, I think, as Carolyn is planning, we will also have a brochure that people. We just really see this as a jumping off point for lots of activities. You know, driving, personal guided driving tours or other kinds of tours to see these places in history, in our history.
Oh, certainly. I'm very hopeful that the jaxhistory.com website, the JAX history, will have your maps on them so people can take their own little private history tours. And Carolyn, you said you have roughly 8 historic markers for your area. Now, talk about your area, because not unlike Arlington, where there are lots of different communities, that you were naming some of them, Cleve, there are several communities that are really considered Durkeeville now, but weren't back in the day.
Right. We basically, our markers will focus on 3 of the major communities in the area, the wider area, that's known as Durkeeville. And one of the first ones that we're marking is the what was called Sugar Hill. And it was an African-American community where the more affluent African-Americans lived, like A.L. Lewis, which would be one of the names that people would most recognize. And that area was called Sugar Hill.
And Lewis was president of the Afro-American Life Insurance
Company. And it's interesting because one of the people that we highlight on the marker is, along with A.L. Lewis, is a man called Joseph Blodgett, who actually was a contractor, an African-American contractor, and one who actually built Lewis's mansion that was in this district of Sugar Hill. And Joseph Blodgett also has, his name is, there's a legacy in terms of the second major housing project built for African Americans in the 1940s is named Blodgett Homes, and it's still a community today. And many people don't know who Joseph Blodgett is, so this is a fabulous opportunity to introduce him to the community.
Now, your site markers are compatible with the ones created by Cleve and Ann. And let's show one of your site markers now, because we have some of that. There you go.
Yes.
Tell about this particular one.
Oh, this is the Sugar Hill marker, and we see the images of A.L. Lewis on my left and Joseph Blodgett on my right. And these 2 men actually were the first 2 African-American millionaires in North Florida, and we think perhaps in the state of Florida. They both lived in the late 19th, early 20th century. And this marker will go up in the area that actually today does not really exist. There's only a small portion of what was originally Sugar Hill, a community that's just a little west of Springfield. And the area now is actually owned by Shands Hospital Complex. And we hope that once the construction has completed, that Shands has done, we'll be able to put this marker down to let people really know what this community was about, and especially these 2 men and how important they were in Jacksonville's early history.
Let's take a quick look at one more marker you'll be using, and now this will probably be the last one we get a chance to look at. Tell us about this marker.
And this one I think is particularly important because this is the marker for Durkeeville, and the images are the founding father, Joseph Durkee, on the left, and his son, Dr. J. Durkee. And the community still bears their name because these were the gentlemen who first owned the property on which this historic African-American community was built. And this marker will go in an area that's more centrally located in the Durkeeville area. And Durkeeville still does exist. It started in the early 1920s and had become a very important historic African American community, and thankfully most of the buildings, or large numbers of the buildings, are still there. We've lost some structures, but we really hope that these markers will inform the people who live there and really celebrate those who really are the ones who created this community of Durkeeville and have descendants and their ancestors. So we really think this is what I call a painless history lesson.
We just have a few minutes left. And Cleve, is there anything you'd like to add about this marker project? Anything you'd like the public to know?
Well, the most important thing is Arlington has history, but unless you know where it's at, you won't see it. And one good example is where Arlington Road crosses Strawberry Creek. That's the remnants of a dam that was built in 1820 to give water power for a grist mill, sawmill, cotton gin, and sugarcane. And also they had a brick yard there. And when you cross that road, that bridge, the roadbed on the north side is the remnants of the dam. So that was the Richard Dam. It was there from 1820 and was still there in 1870. And they had a hurricane that blew out the gates. But things like that, and then other areas where Blue Cypress Park or where the Lions Club Park is in Chaseville, we tried to place these markers where they were facing the river, so when you read them, you'll get the feeling that McNeil, who was Kingsley's son or nephew, what they would feel like sitting on their front porch looking across the river. And the same is true where the Arlington Road ends, where the old ferries, we had ferries from Jacksonville to Fairfield from 1914 to 1933. So we put it facing the boat ramp, which if you were standing there waiting on a ferry, you get the same feel to see the ferry come in. We've even talked about having a boat tour of Arlington and let them pick us up there, you know. Or,
I like that.
Well, Cleve, I want to thank you so much, and Ann, I want to thank you, Dr.
Thank
Williams,
you.
Carolyn,
Thank
I want to
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
I want to thank you all for the thought, the level of thought you put in the project, and I know you'll all join in me in thanking Comcast for supporting this
Yes.
wonderful community
Yes.
project.